everyone, and welcome back to the channel where your likes, comments, and subs are always greatly appreciated. For today's video, I thought I would give my initial overview of the Bluetooth app that is used to control the Zoom R20 multi-track recorder. Now, the R20 came out in late 2021, but the Bluetooth app for it, which was kind of promised in spring of 2022, suffered some delays and setbacks and was not released until very early October of 2022. So the app is here now, and I thought I would provide my initial overview and thoughts and opinions about it. So what I wanted to cover in this video is, one, what do you need to be able to use the app? The requirements for using the app. How do you pair the app to the R20 device and unit? What are the basic functions that you'll get with the app? And then I'll sprinkle in my thoughts and opinions as we kind of go along for the ride here. So what do you need to be able to use the R20 Control app? Well, number one, you need to have a Zoom R20 and you have to update the firmware to version 3.0 or later. So 3.0 is the current version as of the filming of this video, but going forward, I'm sure that using the higher versions will then work with the control app. Additionally, you'll need the BTA1 Bluetooth adapter from Zoom. This is just a small plastic dongle that has a Bluetooth radio inside with some kind of like modified looking USB port connector. So that's what you need. You'll need this little tiny thing. It retails for $40. 40 US dollars at most sites. It will work for a variety of Zoom recording devices. So if you do have like the handy H8 or I think like the L12, maybe a few other devices, you can swap the same Bluetooth dongle out of the R20, put it into the H8 or into the L20 and just buy one of these and it should work between all of the devices. The last element is that you will need an iPad. So the iPad needs to be on iPad iOS 13.6 or higher in order to be able to work as of the filming of this video. So down the road, it may need to be at a higher iPad iOS version number, but right now it needs to be on 13.6 or higher. So the first thing that we have to do is install the BTA1 Bluetooth adapter. On the right side of the R20, there is a dedicated slot where that Bluetooth adapter will go. You just need to remove the cover, insert the BTA1 Bluetooth adapter. It just pops inside and kind of snaps in, and then you're good to go. Next, you'll need to power on the R20. Okay, with the R20 powered on and you are on the project screen, the next thing to do is to go into the project settings by hitting that cog wheel up at the top, and then you can scroll down to Bluetooth. Select Bluetooth and you'll have to connect with the iOS device. This is where you'll need to have your iPad. Once you have the app open on your iPad, you can hit execute on the R20's screen. And now the app will look for the Bluetooth adapter. You can see that it found it. It's not connected. Also, the Bluetooth adapter is glowing blue on the side of the R20 device. So now we can connect. Okay, so we have the R20 that is now paired to my iPad mini. They are talking to each other, the iPad and the R20. I'm having difficulty showing both the R20 screen and the iPad screen on the same camera frame. So bear with me here as I try to at least demonstrate so you get the feel for what it's like to select something either on the R20 versus the iPad. So we're on the project screen for both of these. I can select a project here and it'll open up the project on the R20 or vice versa. If I open up the project on the R20, it will then show the project screen on the iPad. So let's go ahead and do that, and let's just open up this new project that's generically called Zoom 5. And you can see once I select that, now it opens up the project on the R20. So I can try to zoom out here a little bit. Okay, So what you get on the iPad app is really all centered around the fader control view. You do not have the option to see the track view on the iPad app, at least on version 1.0 of the iPad app paired up with version 3.0 of the firmware on the R20. But we can still see the track view on the R20 while we see the fader view on the iPad app. Now, with the much bigger screen on the iPad app, you can see a whole lot more information when you're over here in that fader view compared to what you get on the R20. I'll switch the R20 to the fader view, and what you really can see is the faders along with the general menu features that you can select up at the top. So we have all those features up here at the top, but you get the fader control view, the master fader. We can also slide this over so you can see all 16 tracks pretty quickly, as opposed to having to see only or be able to control tracks 1 through 8 over here, and then you have to hit this extra button to toggle between tracks 9 to 16 to now be able to control tracks 9 to 16. Here it's pretty easy to control all 16 tracks by just swiping over to the side and getting to those extra tracks that you need. Okay, the other stuff that you can see here is the information essentially that is tied to the track settings for any of those individual tracks. So depending on which track you have selected, here I have track 1 selected. You can cycle through the tracks down here at the bottom. They're color coded, just like they're color coded in the track view over on the R20 screen. But within each track, you can automatically see the panning control, the EQ, and the send level with the send effect all on the same screen. Over here, if you wanted to get that information, you would have to touch the track, go to track settings, and now you would get the information about pan, EQ, and send levels. So now we get to see all of that over here in one shot. Additionally, on this side, you get the extra input dynamics for each one of these tracks, which is really centered around, do you want to stereo link tracks 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and just tie those things together? And do you want to use any of the input dynamics for the compressor, limiter, or noise gate along with the settings for those? So it's pretty extensive. You see a whole lot more on the iPad. On the side here of the iPad, you'll get all of the effects that are available as effect patches that you have loaded up onto your R20 unit. So you'll see that whole long list that you can then scroll through. So you get a whole lot more information when it comes to the iPad app. As a companion app, and you put these things side by side, you now have a lot of information on a touchscreen that you can access, whether you're accessing it, the track view over here on the R20, or are you going to access anything that's sort of tied to either the fader view or the track settings on your iPad app. So if you put these things side by side, it's actually pretty nice, and you have comprehensive control that's really quick to access. All right, let me briefly walk you through the features that you have available up at the top of the iPad app. I know it might be a little bit blurry to see, but I want to leave it open so you can see how the iPad is communicating in real time with the R20 and what you get depicted on this screen, so you could use these things next to each other and actually play the information off of each other to be able to work through your project or your song. So first button up at the top there, this is just the Wi-Fi button. It's really the Bluetooth button, kind of looks like a Wi-Fi signal, but it's the Bluetooth button to make sure that you're connected to your R20. Next to that, you have the 3 buttons that you have at the top of the track view for the R20, and that is just to change the track as between and toggle between a audio track. Do you want to use a drum loop track, or do you want to use a MIDI track? So if I select drum track here, you'll notice that it'll switch tracks 1 and 2. It'll turn it into a stereo track where you can now load in the preloaded drum loops that are available on the R20. So I'll touch that up here, and you can see how it flips on the screen over there for tracks 1 and 2. If I switch it to the piano icon over on the iPad app, it will now change this back to a mono track on track 1, but it'll put the piano icon there because it'll turn it into a MIDI track or a synth track. And that's what you see on the screen. So what I will say is that it's not laggy. It's very quick and responsive whenever I hit any of these buttons at the top. Let's put it back onto an audio track. Next is the click control. Do you want to just turn the click on and off with this button? You'll notice that little red dot is over here on the transport controls for the R20. If I touch this icon up here at the top, it'll turn off the click, and we could turn the click back on. So you'll notice that red light will come back on the transport controls on the R20 hardware itself. Next to that are the transport controls for fast forward, stop, play, and record. Then you'll see the time bar that'll let you know where you're at in your song, what time you're at, what beats per minute that you're at. Then you also will get some extra controls over here by clicking this icon for your effects. So here's where you can edit your effects. If you have your effect up, you'll see the effect patch where you have your 3 different, essentially like stomp boxes or pedals that you can now edit and change those settings between. So if you go between them, you'll notice that you have the different settings that you can now play around with and make those adjustments. So easier way to edit your effects. You also have the mix down button up here at the top. If you wanted to mix down, you would see that over here. If we go back to fader view, you can see that red light or orangey light is on that says mix down. So I could turn that on and off, and it immediately turns it on and off on the R20's screen. Next to that is the undo button. And then here is where we can toggle between tracks 1 through 8, and 9 through 16. If I hit the setting wheel cog on the corner, that will then bring up the project settings where you can see the overall time information for D134, 44, 6/8 time, your beats per minute that you can adjust there, how you want the click track to sound. Do you want it to be a cowbell versus a stick versus high Q, and where do you want the sound to go, be routed to for the click? Do you want it out of the headphones or out of the monitor out? You can change those settings there if you need a pre-count or not. So you do get all of the information that shows up on the project settings as well. They go back and forth, and so it's kind of nice to be able to adjust it here on the iPad if you have it next to you. And you can see I close out of the project settings, and it brings me back to whatever screen I was using before. For your effects, you can toggle between send effects and input effects up at the top. It just depends on which tab you're using, but that's an easy way to adjust between send and insert effects. The other thing that I should show you really quick is the faders and how the faders work in real time without any lag. So we've got the faders for track 1. I can now adjust, or maybe I'll move it for track 5 here. You can see the fader that I'm moving on the iPad is very responsive and moving on the R20's screen over here. And when I move it over here on the iPad, there's no lag. When I use it over here, there's really not a lag for fader view and adjusting the faders, but everything else that you sort of touch is just a little bit clunky, a little bit laggy, as I've likened it to an older Android tablet, or if you had an older Fire tablet, it kind of feels like that. This is not laggy. This feels like pretty much an iPad's screen, the responsiveness that you'd expect from a newer iPad model. That's the kind of touch control that you have over here. So even though I'm using a stylus with it, you can use your finger and it works very, very well. Okay, I thought I would run a quick demonstration of recording a very short track. So this is an Artifon Orbit 2 that I just received recently. It's this hockey puck device that's an all-in-one, I don't know, synth drum machine looper type of thing. It's kind of an odd device. It's a weird instrument, but kind of fun to play. So I just put in something here really quick, short loop that we can record. It's running a stereo out cable, just a 3.5 millimeter. So I have that running out and matched up to tracks 1 and 2 on the R20. So let's control a short recording session with this using the iPad app control. Okay, I zoomed into the iPad so you could see the workflow a little bit better, even though I know that the screen will kind of go a little bit in and out of focus, but I wanted you, again, to appreciate the workflow. Additionally, if your iPad supports it, you can use an Apple Pencil if you want, and it will work with the app. Previously, I was using this generic capacitive stylus that has a disc on the end of it because it works with an iPad and it will work with the R20 screen, whereas the Apple Pencil will only work for your iPad screen. But if you have it and your iPad supports it, you can use it, and it is a little bit more accurate, especially when you're moving the sliders around. Okay, so we want to record our Orba 2. This is running a stereo out, and that is fed into channels 1 and 2. We want to record onto tracks 1 and 2. First thing that we need to do is arm tracks 1 and 2 for recording. We do that by selecting the record button at the bottom of the tracks. So I hit that for track 1, and if you could see on the hardware for the R20, the red light for track 1 would come on. Additionally, if you do it for track 2, the same thing happens over there. Track 2's red light is on. We can also apply some send effects if we want. So let's put on some kind of reverb. We have it for send hall 1. Selected right now. Let's just pick something else. So you would scroll through your effects list on the side, and then maybe we just pick send hall 2. We now need to move up the send effect level for track 1 because we have track 1 selected. So let's move that up into the 30s or so, and we need to do the same thing for track 2. So let's select track 2 and move its send effect level up into the 30s. Okay, we have that. That's ready to go. Additionally, maybe we want to create some stereo separation between tracks 1 and 2, so we can move track 2, which on its pan control is in the center. Maybe we move that over to the right a little bit. And for track 1, we can move that over to the left somewhat. I did not set the tempo or the time between the Orba and the R20, so we could turn the click track off. And we should be ready to now record, and then we could adjust the levels if we need to. So what I can do now is hit record on the iPad, which will then activate record on the R20, and I can then turn on the Orba 2 and we'll just play a quick loop and record it. So let's hit record. And that now recorded our track for ourselves. So we have the track recorded on the R20, and now we can use the iPad app to go back and forth and have some level of playback if we're interested. Okay, briefly I could show you what that playback looks like. We recorded our track now onto tracks 1 and 2 of the R20. We're in track view over here, fader view over here. I'll hit play and you'll see the timeline go across, and the faders will show you your levels. Okay, that gives you an idea of how these things communicate, and if you put them side by side, you can take advantage of both screens at the same time. So the first thing to address is this is only on iPads. So one, it's not on Android at all, and I don't necessarily see Zoom developing the app, at least not in the near future, for Android devices. They don't really have Android support on their other apps. They seem to be focused and centered around iOS apps at this moment in time. Therefore, I don't know if they're going to bring anything to Android. They have not been advertising Android at any point in time on the R20's web pages for having some sort of app control, Bluetooth app control. So right now, if you have an Android phone or Android device, I wouldn't get your hopes up that they have anything in the works anytime soon. Additionally, it's only on iPad. So when they were showing pictures of the Bluetooth app initially on the R20 web pages, they were showing it on iPhones, and you would see people using iPhones to kind of control the app, or at least you got the impression that they were using an iPhone app to control the R20 hardware. That's not the case. When the app, at least version 1.0 came out, it is only available on iPads, and that's it. And you can understand why. It seems like they put a lot of time and effort into developing a screen that gives you a lot of information. So you don't just have a copy of this screen on your phone or on your iPad. You actually have a different screen, a screen that has a lot more information. I like being able to scroll through and seeing the effects all in one place. Very easy to access, as opposed to tunneling through some menus to get to your effects if you want to select an effect or be able to edit an effect. They're taking advantage of the extra screen real estate here on the iPad. So I understand at least why version 1.0 was developed and pushed out just for the iPad. Still, when they were advertising that you had an iPhone being able to control the R20, I'm a little bit disappointed that we don't see any functionality for an iPhone, at least initially. I'd like to think that that's still in the works, since they did have pictures of it initially, but it's unknown at this point if that's actually going to be something that Zoom is developing. The next point that I want to address is, I have to say, I was pretty shocked and surprised when I went to the App Store and I saw that the R20 Control app was finally available, and I went to download it and it says it's 99 cents. It's $1 to buy the app. That just blew my mind, and I have no idea why Zoom is doing that. It just seems like a horribly bad move for Zoom. You have to buy the $40 hardware adapter in order to get this communication to work. I understand that this is a luxury. It's not part of the core functionality. You don't need it to be able to do anything that the R20 does. This is not really adding anything new. It's just giving you a different workflow and interface. This does everything on the screen. So being able to use a Bluetooth app is an extra thing. And it was advertised as such ever since the R20 was released. It said a Bluetooth app is coming and you need to buy the optional adapter. So I understand Zoom's business model there, where they have this hardware adapter, and the hardware adapter can go in and out of multiple Zoom recording devices if you happen to have them, so you could save money there. But you're paying $40 for that piece of hardware, and clearly that little adapter does not cost $40 for a Bluetooth radio with a little bit of a modified like USB connector. Probably costs like $5 or something to manufacture, and obviously there was some research and development that went into it. Therefore, I feel like that overhead and that profit just goes along with the software development. So when they put that software development in, then the app should be free. Everything that you're buying is in that $40 piece of hardware. And I'm okay with that. I'm comfortable with that. But when you're charging me $40 for a piece of a hardware to be able to have this level of communication, and then you charge me $1 on top of it, it's kind of just insulting that that's your business model. And I don't even understand why Zoom is even bothering to do that if they're charging $1 for an app. Apple usually takes a 30% cut of anything that comes out of the App Store. So you're telling me that Zoom's only collecting 70 cents for every dollar that people are buying this. Let's say, I don't know, 10,000 people buy the app, and Zoom's only going to wind up getting, what, $7,000 from that? I mean, that for what? Just to annoy people when they already bought a $40 adapter? Just seems like a dumb business move. I understand if Zoom loaded up the R20 and they put Bluetooth hardware in there, and now the app, again, is a luxury. You don't need it. It's an extra thing. And then they charge me $5, $10, even $20 for the app in the App Store. I could totally understand that because it's an extra thing, and they could have advertised it as such from the get-go if the Bluetooth hardware was already in there. But if you're going to make me buy a $40 Bluetooth adapter, I'm just expecting that the software is going to come along with it. Not you're going to charge me $40 for that. Oh, and also $1 for the app. That just blows my mind. And Zoom, just don't do it. If you're listening, I don't think you are, but if you're listening, just don't do that. Why? It's not worth it just to alienate your customers with this. Next thing to address is there is no track view on here. And the pictures that they had initially shown with people on an iPhone pretty much all we're showing the track view, which is what you see over here on this screen, where you can actually see the audio files or the MIDI files all put together in an arranged mode. So you can see how your song is put together. And the big advantage there is this is where you're going to do all of your light touchscreen editing, which is the big advantage of the Zoom R20. I thought having the app, the Bluetooth app, even on your phone, to be able to trim up your audio samples, split them, copy and paste them, moving them around with a lot more precision. I was kind of excited to be able to potentially do that on an iPhone, where the iPhone screen is going to be a lot more responsive than the R20 screen. If I could do the editing on here and the trimming up here so I could be really accurate using an iPhone or an iPad, I would be pretty excited about that. Yet on version 1.0 of the app, the track view is not available. That's a huge bummer. I mean, especially when you're showing me pictures from when I first bought the device in late 2021, that this is what you're kind of promising me. And then version 1 comes out and it's nowhere to be found. It just feels like another letdown. I'd like to think, again, with all those pictures that they were showing, that means that they had to have something in development. I don't think that they were just photoshopping in pictures of track view onto the phone with no thought. I'd like to think that the marketing team at Zoom is talking to the R&D team. So I'd like to think that that's still going to come out because it's probably in the pipeline. And with so many delays on the app, it took a long time for this app to come out. I could see where maybe the track view was causing them problems. They did not have it perfected. They just wanted to go with this. And it's a complementary screen to the track view screen that you could put up on the R20, and you put these things side by side. Now you have something that's kind of nice to work with. And then maybe they'll say on version 2.0, we need more time. Then we'll put together the track view for the iPad and you could do your editing here. I'm going to be pretty excited, to be honest with you, if they do bring it to the iPad and the screen responsiveness is what it's like over here when I'm moving the faders, because I think that this is really responsive. This feels like an iPad screen, and there really isn't any kind of perceivable lag when I'm moving things around over here to what's happening on the R20. So it works well. It's a stable Bluetooth connection that's sending enough data back and forth to make this kind of like a nice, powerful device when you pair these things together. Would love to be able to do that in track view and also do all my trimming and editing here instead of trying to get really close and trim, which I could do it here, especially with the stylus. But man, having a nice big screen to do that, that would be fantastic. Overall, I think that I would sum this up as I have reserved enthusiasm for the app. Right now, do you need it? No, you do not need it. It's a bonus feature. It's a luxury. Everything that I was doing on here, you can absolutely do on the screen already on the device. You don't need this. But I could see the promise and the potential here, especially with the responsiveness of the screen. And they are giving us a lot more information all at our fingertips, so you don't have to go menu diving. When I put this next to the R20 and I leave this in track view, it is pretty cool that I could see all this stuff. And I really love being able to navigate, especially through the effects, very quickly to select something and then edit it rapidly, and then still use hardware transport controls over here. It's starting to look like a nice pairing if they continue to develop this. Love to see the track view be implemented into the feature set here. But I do like where this is going. I mean, I didn't really show it, but you can mute and solo your tracks down at the bottom as opposed to trying to pull out the drawer, which is always a pain in the butt when I'm trying to get the drawer in and out of, you can see it never wants to go back in. So some of those drag features from coming off the screen, I don't want to deal with it. Being able to just touch something right here on the iPad, fantastic. I love that. So I'm kind of excited about it. I look forward to Zoom hopefully continue to develop the hardware and the software behind the R20. They have delivered multiple firmware updates in the first year, so that shows a lot of promise. I like that Zoom is supporting their budget multi-tracker, and they're giving us a lot more features as they keep working on the device. And there is tons of potential and promise here if they keep going with it. I love it. I think that I'm going to continue to use it. I just wish you didn't charge me $1 for the app after I paid $40 for that little hardware dongle piece. But, if Zoom could just get their act together, they do have something here that, again, the competition doesn't really have, and it's starting to separate themselves from the other multi-trackers that are out there. So overall, you want a multi-tracker device that will allow you to edit samples in an easier way, that you don't have to just try to use markers and jog dials and get really close, and you can never really get a great trim, or you can never really split your tracks that well. This does a better job with that with the screen here, and then the potential to have an awesome screen over here. But even just having the fader control next to the track view here already is adding another dimension to being able to record with a standalone device where you don't have a DAW and 2 monitors hooked up to your computer. That's still going to be a gold standard that you can't beat in terms of quality and what you could do. But if you don't really want to go with a DAW, you don't want to have a computer with a big setup and multiple monitors here, this is starting to get you some of that functionality. There's going to be compromises along the way, no doubt, but it still is separating itself from the competition. With that, that's what I wanted to cover for the initial overview with the R20 Control app paired up with the R20. I'll be working on using the app in the future and probably delivering more content with it. If you have questions or anything else that you want me to showcase or feature, leave them in the comments of this video below, and I'll try to address those comments in a timely fashion. And if there's good ideas and something that I can actually deliver on, I'll try to make some educational tutorial videos about it. So with that, thank you for watching. Hope you found this video informative, and I'll see you again soon. Goodbye.